Part 88. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 874. Don't wear mage robes when you go out into the wild. Wear short jackets and trousers that are easy to move around. The less eye-catching the better. Led by Gretel, a group of people swarmed into the equipment department of the alchemy workshop and worked hard to buy. The equipment department was crowded and bustling, with at least a dozen magicians selecting equipment. Greet guessed that they probably got the news and came over to prepare for the battlefield and choose equipment. Unlike those magicians who shop freely, as soon as Greet and his gang arrived, someone immediately came to receive them. Hearing that they wanted to buy clothes, he took them directly to the mage robe area without thinking twice. Then, old Morgan looked at those colorful mage robes with a critical eye, and directly rejected most of them at a glance. The magician who led the way silently rolled his eyes in his heart. It's okay for magicians to be picky about their products. You, a warrior, are going to pick on magicians' equipment? You can't afford it, right? Someone was talking quietly not far away. The magician who led the way gave him a thumbs up in his heart. That's right. Maybe it's really unaffordable. Most of these magic robes are made of silk, using gold, silver, and mithril threads to embroider spells and texts, or starting from weaving, the transformation mage directly uses magic power to weave. Each one is so expensive. The cheapest one costs 50 contribution points and the most expensive one costs 1000 contribution points. However, before he could frown, Greed nodded beside him. Master said it so well. You need to be able to move around easily when you go on a mission. Excuse me, could you please take us to another area to see if there are any robes that meet the requirements? The reception mage of the alchemy workshop clenched his fist and unclenched it. With a smile on his face, he turned around. No problem, please come with me, I just want to go out into the wild. Isn't it just about taking risks? The Alchemy Guild has a special equipment area for mages who want to take risks. A group of people picked around and tried Aurora as a clothes rack. Finally, I chose a coat made of grade 6 suede leather, which was reinforced with suede horns. It is cut-proof and stab-proof, fireproof to a certain extent, and its strength is very satisfactory. At the same time, it is thin, soft, waterproof and windproof. The cuffs and hem are closed, and there is a hood behind the head that can be tightened with a drawstring, which perfectly meets the requirements of outdoor activities. That's it? How much does it cost? 500 contribution points. Hey, are you sure you can afford it? A top costs 500 contribution points as well. American Samoa bottoms and shoes. Greet threw out the mage badge without blinking an eye. The receptionist took it over and brushed it, then quietly took a breath. Before the balance is displayed, the obvious discount ratio pops up first. Big customer. A big customer of the alchemy workshop. Unfortunately, his income will be discounted. His sales commission is based on the actual price paid by the customer, not the product price. Greet was unusually calm. He had just finished the treatment list for the council, and he had also finished treating the high-ranking knights in the temple, and he had saved a lot of money. Hey, if you put it this way, you can discuss with the God of War temple to ask a few high-level knights to temporarily protect Aurora for a period of time. Another pair of trousers. The same requirements, made from mid-level magic beast leather, anti-cut and puncture-proof, breathable, and waterproof. They should be elastic and easy to move, and the trousers should be able to be tightened and inserted into shoes. I recommend these, blue Siro leather trousers from the New World. The knees and trouser legs are reinforced with crocodile skin. It's easy to use regardless of climbing or rolling. It only costs 500 contribution points. Bought it? Don't wear soft-soled shoes like this. Hard-soled shoes with non-slip and waterproof soles and high-top boots that tightly wrap around your ankles. When venturing into the wild, what you fear most is spraining your feet and losing your mobility. That's right. Well, it's best to have custom-made shoes. Do you have any masters here who can handle custom-made work? We're in a hurry. We must get it in half a month. You can customize an additional cloak. When you need to be concealed, the cloak can protect you well. The cloak should be light, soft, and warm. When necessary, it can be used as a mat, blanket, or quilt cover. It can be equipped with an invisibility spell, Master Norwood added. Greet nodded. In addition to enchantment, the cloak itself should also be painted, camouflage or something. The staff doesn't want to be flashy. If you look at it from a distance, you'll be blinded by the gold, silver, and gems on it. The simpler, the better. The less eye-catching the better. It's best to be like him. Old Morgan pointed at Gretel. Greet spread his hands. Natural priest's oak staff, right? But unfortunately, this one really cannot be lent. Okay, I know what you mean. Get a long stick? It's hard and light. It's wrapped with cloth strips to prevent it from slipping. It can be used as a crutch when walking in the wild. It would be best if it can be made to adjust the length. Add a wrist strap to make it convenient to go up and down the mountain. Are you here to pick up a staff that increases the power of spells, or are you here to pick up a walking stick to assist in outdoor activities? For the latter one, go chop down a tree trunk. We won't stop you. The receiving mage cursed desperately, but still tried his best to recommend 17 or 8 magic staffs to them. Staffs are much harder to buy than clothes. Gretel and his friends looked at all the staffs and finally picked one. Next, space equipment, various potions, various scrolls. Don't worry about me, think about yourself first. Aurora didn't even blink at Greet, and she worked hard to earn money, which was so frightening. He spread his fingers, pressed on Gretel's shoulders, and pulled him to turn in one direction. Aren't you going to? You are the most important thing. If you are safe, we are all good. If something happens to you, we will just. Sarala snorted unhappily next to her. Aurora quickly turned to Miss Silver Dragon, smiled flatteringly, and took a step behind Gretel. Greet spread his arms and stopped him with a smile. Oh, I'm different from you. I. Don't say it here. Gretel touched his nose and shrugged. After the big purchase, Gretel returned to the Mage Tower. His eyebrows were full of joy, and he continued to talk about his mission. Senior Brother Carlyle said that when the time comes, my task will probably be to go to the border to establish an epidemic prevention and isolation zone. After a major disaster, there will be a major epidemic. We must be careful of those who evacuate from the other side and carry any infectious diseases with them. The elite team sent by the Parliament needs to be quarantined after returning. Some of the defeated troops in the Netherlands needed to come here to rest, receive treatment, and be quarantined. The Parliament secretly thought of various ways to isolate the various craftsmen, workshop owners, craftsmen, and their families poached from the Netherlands. The most important thing, and also the largest scale, are the people who are fleeing from the opposite side. We need to gather them together as much as possible and quarantine them to prevent the plague from spreading in the kingdom. At that time, I should be in charge of this whole thing. In charge of a camp, or running back and forth between several camps to see if there is anything that needs to be adjusted or improved. Don't worry, I won't go to the front line. Bernard moved his lips but said nothing. Just because you don't go to the front line doesn't mean that the front line won't come to you. In the earliest days, what did you say about becoming a healer with the Lord's army? It is said that everyone stayed in the rear camp and did nothing else except daily treatment of the wounded soldiers. In the end, they ran from the wounded soldiers' camp to the scout team, from the scout team, to directly confront the masters of the Lord of Glory. Later, when we went to the Dwarf Kingdom, what did we say? He said that he would stay well in Wangting and not go anywhere, especially not to climb snow-capped mountains or dangerous places. And after? Climbed 2 snow-capped mountains, met 2 dragons, and even soared thousands of miles from the dragon's nest to the wilderness. This time he said that he would stay in the rear camp where it would be absolutely safe and he would never go to the front line. I believe you. If you don't go to the front line will still come to you. In short, you also need training. Old Morgan observed the words and made the final decision. The previous warrior training only trained your basic qualities, such as strength, agility, endurance, etc. Your fighting habits and fighting intuition cannot be seen at all. Especially, people like you will be the key targets of the opponent. Greet nodded with a grimace. Since then, a new one has been added to his and Aurora's daily tasks. Woah! Aurora turned left, turned right, and fled around the tree. After running away for a few steps, Bernard caught up with him, carrying a branch covered in mud, and slapped it on his back. You died again. Again. Bernard, please be gentler, it's all swollen. Aurora touched it with her backhand with a frown on her face. Bernard waved the branch and made a woo sound. Run. Run. If the spell is used up, these 2 legs are your last hope. You just think it will be cured anyway, right? Aurora continued running with a frown on her face. I was slapped 70 or 80 times a day, and my shoulders, back, arms, and legs were all swollen. Although it's just a matter of healing, even Appa can help him heal without using Gretel, let alone Sarah, but it hurts. Ah! Gretel stepped on the air, held his head in his hands, and rolled down the hill behind the mage tower. After rolling 5 times in a row, old Morgan quickly caught up and grabbed him. Feather falling technique. Flotation technique. No way, let's use an activating rope. Mage Nordmark, your reaction is too slow. Greet moved his limbs twice, and was put down to the ground by old Morgan, who staggered again. Raising his head, Cyrilla was sitting high on the treetop, gnawing on a fruit, smiling and looking at it with great interest. Seeing Gretel looking up, she waved the fruit in her hand and shouted. Gretel! If you don't want to practice, don't practice. I'll protect you. Gretel! Keep coming. This time, you must master mobile casting. While running and rolling, these life-saving low-level spells must be released successfully. It would be too embarrassing to let Sarah save him. Ah! Who put a rope trap here? Who? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Kook Electron for the 5,000 starting coin reward. Today I heard that some places have obtained long-term, 1 week, travel permits. I hope we will soon. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 875. Gretel, ah! Let go of your mental power. Feel everything around you. You are still a natural priest. You can't even feel a pit. Anivia can defeat you. Gretel, I, the natural pastor, am a fake, okay, a fake, besides, who has no problem turning on environmental awareness all the time. So tired. A magician's mental power, like his eyes and ears, is his own thing. Do you close your eyes when you listen with your ears? Do you block your ears when you smell with your nose? Gretel. But when I want to hear clearly, I do close my eyes. Isn't it said that blind people have the best hearing? Besides, using mental power to observe the outside world is not like using sight and hearing. We have been trained to do multiple things in parallel since we were young. Isn't it okay that my brain can't handle it? It is so difficult to resonate with nature and enter a meditative state. Cast a spell. Cast a spell. When you are doing surgery, you can cut and treat at the same time. Why can't you do it when you are running? Imagine you are carrying a wounded person on your back, running while trying to stop his bleeding dash. Greet, ah, bang. Oh no, I just threw a greasy spell while running, lost my accuracy and slipped. Gretel, really, do you want to solidify a feather falling technique? I've fallen a few times today. Gretel and Aurora are training hard. You don't expect to become a super soldier. At the very least, when you are at a disadvantage, when you are separated from the large army, when you are being chased, you must be able to escape without holding others back. Bernard is training like hell. Under the guidance of old Morgan, he finally broke through to the 9th level warrior and is currently trying to adapt to his own strength. Every day, I was beaten badly by old Morgan. Even old Morgan is training. You don't dare to work hard. The long-term deformed spine has been surgically corrected, but the muscles and fascia have to be adjusted bit by bit to adapt to the current situation. And, continue to work hard to replenish nutrition, replenish the energy and blood lost during years of hard training, adjust the state, and prepare for another attack on the advancement. Eat. Eat. Eat, eat, eat. Storm inhalation. Under the pretext of asking old Morgan to accompany him to protect Aurora, Gretel forced a pile of Warcraft meat onto him. During this time, the Mage Tower is open to provide food, so you can eat whatever you want. It doesn't matter if you get fat, you can afford it. Anyway, in the name of conducting experiments, Gretel gathered a whole warehouse of monster meat of various levels from the council and the temple in the warehouse at the bottom of the Mage Tower. After eating it, Miss Silver Dragon's teeth leaked. Son, that's enough for everyone. The time left for Greet and the others is about 2 months. However, there is not much time left for the Dutch nobles. King Brolin sent his first general, the Duke of Toledo, to lead a royal regiment of 20,000 people, and pushed over in a mighty manner. Most of the 20,000 strong troops had landed in the Kingdom of Kent with the Holy See Army a few years ago. They were particularly strong in combat effectiveness and had a particularly firm hatred of pagans. As soon as the troops were sent out, they conquered the city and pushed the front to the center of the Netherlands. Parallel with the Royal Legion, there are also the Black Knights of the Inquisition led by the Grand Inquisitor Gravela of the Netherlands, and a group of magicians temporarily given by the Holy See. Scattered among the royal legions, providing them with healing and magical support. The Dutch nobles, who had been oppressed into a corner, united again. We can't take it any longer. If you endure it any longer, you will either be arrested and hanged one by one, or everyone will be covered in sackcloth and walk to the glory holy city on a journey of atonement. If it really gets to that point, I would rather die. The Earl of Delft was beheaded. General Godfrey was also beheaded. They said they were going to announce the king's decree, but they went there, but they turned against each other, arrested, and beheaded. Even if we are lucky enough to survive, what is waiting for us? Beheading our entire family? Exiling? Or depriving us of our noble titles? No matter what originally belonged to us can no longer belong to us. Fight! Fight! Finally, all the nobles turned to the Duke of the Netherlands in unison, lowered their heads, and knocked on their chests with their right fists. Dear Duke, please lead us, just like the people of the Netherlands, under the glory of the Tulip family in the past hundreds of years. The Duke of the Netherlands took a long breath. He grasped the hilt of the sword, stood up, raised the sword high and pointed it towards the sky. The people of the Netherlands will never succumb to the tyranny of greed. We would rather die in freedom than live in humiliation. Those people who are above us say that we are beggars, let them see the power that beggars have. Long live the beggar! Long live the beggar! The roar of shouts spread from the conference hall of the Duke's palace to every corner of the castle. Continuing outward, wave after wave, spread throughout the entire Netherlands. Long live the beggar! The Duke of the Netherlands, all the nobles, and wealthy merchants in the Netherlands organized an army by selling pot and iron. Half is his own private army, half is mercenary. In the great northern wilderness, large areas of barbarian tribes do not even have enough to eat. As long as there are shiny gold coins, yellow millet, and snow-white flour, they will be shipped in piles. If you want 10,000 to 10,000, if you want 20,000 to 20,000. Every adult male barbarian starts with at least level 1 warrior. After a little training, he can jump up to levels 2, 3, and 4, and if he goes berserk, it will definitely not be a problem to fight against human knights. Half a month later, the main force of the resistance army led by the Duke of the Netherlands met the main force of the Royal Army. After the First World War, the Royal Army suffered heavy casualties. Looks good. The magicians can join the battle. No, look again, the first battle took advantage of the terrain, and it was a surprise. The main force of the Royal Army was not defeated. The magicians who were paying close attention to the situation were talking about it and had different opinions. Before they could reach an agreement, the second battle broke out again in the central Netherlands, near the east side. This time, the 10,000-strong army led by William Orange, the younger brother of the Duke of the Netherlands, who led the petition to the royal capital, was almost completely wiped out. William Orange only escaped with his life. The Duke of the Netherlands, who had lost a large number of his main troops, had to go into exile and work hard to organize mercenaries in order to fight again. Are you fools? In the dark forest, merchant Baron Perry Hayes slapped the tree stump and sprayed his saliva directly on the faces of a group of earls and viscounts. On the Great Plains, confronting the Royal Cavalry Regiment. With our few manpower and this little training, do we want to withstand the Wang family's phalanx with magical blessings? We don't know what our advantage is. How many of us can withstand this? Have you gone through rigorous knight training? Then what do you think we should do? The Duke of the Netherlands also got a little splash on his face. He didn't care and asked directly without even wiping it. Baron Hayes looked at him like an idiot. Get out of the plains. Deal with them. In the mountains and forests, I don't believe they can climb the mountains on horseback. And on the sea, there are so many fishing boats. Let them all go out and give them a knife in the back. The cavalry can charge on the plains, but they can't charge on the rivers. Dig channels. Build embankments. The terrain in the Netherlands is so low, as long as they dig a little, the river water will stop them. What about our fields? With this year's harvest, do you still expect the fields? If we don't drive them out, we will have nothing. Under the planning and instigation of Baron Hayes, the people of the Netherlands organized multiple guerrilla groups to fight against the Royal Army on various fronts. Farmers from the mountainous areas in the north and east took up hoes and retreated into the mountains, forming an army of forest beggars. The fishermen on the western and southern coasts used their fishing boats as warships and formed dense nets to pursue and intercept the Brolan Kingdom's ships at sea. Warships are also blocked, merchant ships are also blocked. Loss. Of course there are losses, and they are huge. However, the advantage of the Dutch is that there are many boats, especially small boats and fishing boats, and they are densely packed with thousands of sailboats racing. Trade a small boat for a big one. As long as you are not afraid of death, you can disgust the enemy to death just by being disgusted. What's more, there are a large number of explosives provided by the Parliament at a low price, magically treated waterproof explosive bags, piled up in a small boat, pushed across by wind and water, boom. It's time. A snowflake of news reached Parliament. After careful consideration and judgment, the review meeting finally made a decision. Dispatch our people. Send magicians to join the resistance team on land, send our warships to mix with the Dutch warships and intercept the Brolan warship at a targeted location. Also, open the coastal shipyards to quickly repair their ships, open designated areas to allow Dutch refugees, especially women and children, to take refuge in the Kingdom of Kent. With an order, Greet and Aurora packed their bags and rushed to their own battlefields. "Master, Oro, I'm leaving my favor to you." Before leaving, Greet dragged old Morgan and gave him many instructions. "No matter what, please watch him and follow the team. Don't fall into the trap. If he does something stupid, even if he is knocked unconscious and tied up, you must bring him back. By the way, do you want APA to do something stupid? Following you? Is it really convenient to run away if something happens? You gotta do it." Aurora pushed him back angrily. "Appa. As big as APA is, with such wide horns, he is still not conspicuous enough wherever he stands. At that time, it's hard to say whether he will run away or not. If someone is keeping a close eye on him and focusing his fire, that's fine. Think about yourself. Don't think that you are safe in the rear. If they know which area you are in, believe it or not, the other party can dispatch an elite force, all of them are bosses at level 15 or above, across the ocean. Come to kill you." Cyrilla snorted in displeasure. "Level 15? What is level 15? If there was really a level 15 team with 5 people, even 10 people, she could kill them all by herself. It also allowed Gretel to stay on her back without a single hair being rubbed. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Already 1960 votes. Come on everyone, vote. If you cast enough 2000 votes, you will get an extra 2 months of votes for an extra update, and if you cast 3000 votes, you will get an extra 4 months of votes. Thanks to @Rawson for the 500 starting coins. Thanks to @Rodeer for tipping 100 starting coins. I bought 2 kilograms of prawns and 2 sea bass in the group purchase today. I can eat fish and shrimps for a few days. I ate meat every day and had nothing else to eat. It was really uncomfortable. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 876. Gretel's gossip was correct. The task he was assigned was indeed border quarantine. Gretel took Cyrilla, Bernard, and Appa along the Loch River at the end of the Nevesfjord and ran all the way to the northeast of the kingdom. At the end of the Loch River is the canal, and at the end of the canal, beyond the loch, is the long and narrow Lake Loch. At the end of the lake, and walking a little further along the river, you will arrive at the main castle of the Earl of Inverness. Greet did not go to see the Count, but took the map and turned left into a bay. Standing on a high cliff and looking down, looking inwards, there is a river that gradually becomes thinner and narrower. Towards the coast, there is a big trumpet. This place looks so familiar. It looks similar to the place where I met Senior Brother Carlyle. The sea breeze blows on my face. Gretel's soft hair was blown into a mess. He tugged on his hood and told Cyrilla with nostalgia, "This is it." At that time, we were chased by people from the Holy See. After crossing the river, we were blocked on a cliff. At that time, Bernard was seriously injured trying to protect me. I was just a first-level mage, so I used all the methods. It's all gone, I almost died. At that time, he also killed a 9th-level knight, Bernard said quietly. Killing level 9 at one level is considered to be the pinnacle of his fighting power in his life. After so many years, I estimate that if he really takes action, he won't even be able to beat me. Confronting the enemy head-on is the same as being caught by surprise. Gretel opened his eyes wide and argued hard. When the opponent is defenseless and has no defense at all, and uses magic to attack him unexpectedly, it's the same as me being defenseless and giving you a sneak attack in the woods. If I put on all my defenses and you rush over with a big stick from the opposite side, it won't be the same. If you can't hit me, okay. Sirara couldn't stop laughing. After laughing for a long time, he waved his hands meaningfully and comforted Greed. Oh, oh. You are just a therapist anyway, and you don't have to fight with others head on. If you can beat me, then fight. If you can't, then you still have me. Gretel. Why do I feel like I am not comforted at all? After looking at the overall layout, Greet took Sarah and others and strolled down the mountain. Arrive at the quarantine camp on the edge of the bay. From a distance, I saw a group of soldiers holding spears and standing in a row vigilantly. Seeing them, he bowed deeply from afar. Master Mage. Are you here for inspection? Greet let out a small sigh. Most of the soldiers in front of them only wore tweed coats and bare heads, or wore tweed felt hats, only the captain wore leather armor. The spear in my hand is a bit crooked, and its combat effectiveness is very questionable. Judging from his appearance and equipment, he was no different from his status as a lowly city guard when he first came to this world. I was assigned by the Parliament to come here to inspect the situation in the quarantine area. He jumped off the APA and handed over a certificate. The captain who stepped forward to talk did not answer, but leaned on his spear and bowed deeply for the second time. Master Mage, please wait a moment, we will call the presiding spellcaster to come over. I'm very sorry, we can't read dash. It's okay, go ahead. Greet waved his hand good-naturedly. Behind the captain, a young soldier ran inside. Gretel was also idle and asked casually. Are you the Parliament's army? Or the Count's? We are soldiers of the Earl. Your Excellency. On the order of the Earl, we are blocking the road here. No one is allowed to enter or exit without permission. Oh? What about here? Was it also built by the Earl? Yes. After saying this, the captain's chest puffed up and his face glowed with pride. People from our village helped build it. This year's harvest is not good. By building this, the workers can have enough to eat and take half a caddy of wheat home. The women and children helped deliver water and meals, and made mats. A basket can also take care of food. Gretel couldn't help but smile. He asked leisurely and learned that the epidemic prevention camp in this area was a collaboration between the Parliament and the Earl of Inverness. The Parliament encircled an area in the earldom as an isolation and epidemic prevention camp. The Earl requisitioned a large number of surrounding residents and built some houses or shacks in the camp for the isolation of people. A group of soldiers were dispatched to surround several isolation points, especially blocking the roads to prevent the quarantined people from escaping. The port was dredged, the shipyard was repaired, and an additional group of soldiers were dispatched to the port to transport drinking water. Outsiders were not allowed to enter or exit. At this point in the conversation, the presiding mage of the isolation point has quickly come out to pick up the people. The person who came was a second-level mage in his 30s, who looked more like an accountant than a mage. Of course, no matter how low-level the magician is, he can do it well if he takes on accounting work. He has been working here for more than a month, responsible for drawing up planning drawings according to the overall epidemic prevention requirements, guiding villagers to build sheds, dig ditches, and arrange various food expenses. After more than a month, I have been so busy that my clothes have become wider. Greet walked around the epidemic prevention point. It can be seen that this epidemic prevention point is designed for the poor. There are independent long houses, each of which can accommodate about 20 people, separated by at least 2 meters from each other. In addition to the large number of houses gathered together, there are also several small houses located far on the other side of the isolation point, apparently to separate the sick and healthy people as much as possible. The toilet was specially dug, and a foundation of cement was used around it to prevent leakage. Gretel had an idea for himself, thinking of the cement thing, and secretly praised it. Coming from the port, there are 2 large houses on the left and right. According to the presiding master, this is to allow the refugees to take a bath, change clothes, and remove lice and fleas from their bodies. Greet laughed as he listened. Behind her, Cyrilla lowered her voice and whispered to Bernard and Appa. These are all designed by Gretel. Isn't it great? I wrote all these requirements for him. Gretel didn't look back, put his hands behind his back, and quietly gave Cyrilla a thumbs up. I have to admit that the arrangement of the isolation zone is quite good. Of course, Gretel learned from the conversation with the presiding mage that the Earl of Inverness was not unpaid for his hard work. First, a large number of warships from the Parliament and a large number of warships from the Netherlands docked at the port of Inverness for repairs. These expenses will naturally fall into the Earl's pocket. Secondly, the council sent people over. Although most magic items can be brought with you, there are always some food, drink, and low-end supplies that need to be purchased locally. These demands naturally added income to the earldom. Thirdly, don't the bread, vegetable soup, and firewood that quarantined persons eat need to be purchased locally. Last of the last. The civilians, farmers, craftsmen who disembarked here and stayed in the isolation camp, the Parliament will naturally take away a group, and the Earl of Inverness can also share the profits. In contrast, just by setting aside a territory and providing manpower to help with the work, the Earl made a lot of money. Make a lot of money. Of course, Gretel's design was not complete. At the very least, he had not considered security work or, in other words, he decisively passed the blame on the Parliament for this matter, euphemistically saying that professional people do professional things. Now it seems that there are professionals who have taken over the job for him. A small building was built in each of the four corners of the small village, east, south, west, and north, which is enough to overlook the entire village. Introduction by the presiding mage. I live in the building on the west side. The building on the east side is the largest and is where the guards live. They are responsible for guarding the brazier on the top floor and guiding the ships. The south side is where supplies are stored, transported, and distributed. They are sent by the Earl. People live in the north, and herbalists live in the north. Then where do we live? Cyrilla asked quietly from behind. The presiding mage immediately felt embarrassed. I will live downstairs and give up the upstairs. Oh no. Oh no. They said they would send people from above to patrol, but they didn't say there were so many people coming. A level 8 mage, a barbarian, and an elf beauty. There are only 2 rooms upstairs. Well, that should be enough for them to live in, right? Will that elf beauty fall out? Hey, we won't bother you. Gretel smiled. He looked back at Cyrilla. Let's live in the mage's hut. It's comfortable to live in something you summoned by yourself. Isn't it more comfortable than living in these small houses? Cyrilla tilted her head and thought for a moment, and actually agreed. Greet continued to move forward. Can you show me the surrounding defenses? The main thing is that in this area, people inside must be guaranteed to be allowed in and out under necessary conditions, and no one can escape. No problem, no problem. The presiding mage immediately took him to the side. Fences have been erected around the village, and there are guards guarding every intersection. No one is allowed in or out. When the refugees come here, they don't know the terrain, what cities are around them, and they don't know the people. They have no food or drink. They must be don't dare to run away. That's not necessarily the case, Gretel thought silently. Especially when groups are locked in a room and not allowed to go out for several days. Especially when some people are infected with the plague and fall ill one after another. Especially when sick people are dragged out of their homes. I don't know where they go, what kind of treatment they will receive, I don't know whether they are alive or dead, I don't know. Under such circumstances, the refugees who are isolated in the quarantine camp are very likely to be incited by someone to cause a collective riot, rush out of the house, or even rush out of the camp when they are anxious and frightened. Why did the medical staff try their best to comfort the patients in the shelter in the previous life, and led them to do Tai Chi and aerobics to the best of their ability? It's scary for patients to make trouble, let alone a group of healthy people. You need to add some protection, he said softly. Without waiting for the presiding mage to ask, he knelt down on one knee and pressed it on the ground beside the fence. Grow taller. If you still have energy, if you can hear my voice, please grow thicker, deeper, and taller. Yes, it grows to the height of a human head, then a little taller. Then, thorny vines, please wrap them around to add a layer of protection to the fence so that those who want to climb can't get their hands on it. There are also dots of weeds inside the camp. With his eyes closed, he reviewed the skills he was currently using from the memories he received from his senior masters after receiving the oak staff, and from the knowledge he received from the oak trees at the place of inheritance on Ioland Island. Weeds in the campground, especially those growing around the houses. Please listen to my prayer, adjust the way you grow, and emit a quiet and delicate fragrance. Let those who smell it, and those who are in the house, have peace of mind and be free from fear and anxiety. Wow, Gretel, you finally look like a natural priest. Amidst the swaying scent of grass, Cyrilla whispered in praise. I need a monthly pass of 2,000 UN soon. Come on everyone. If you cast 2,000 votes, you will get 2 additional chapters, and if you cast 3,000 votes, you will get 4 additional chapters. Keep asking for monthly votes, recommendation votes, book reviews, and all kinds of things. Thanks to the Strong Sea Monster for the 5,000 starting coins reward. Thanks to @1115 for the reward of 1,500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 877. Worn out. I'm almost exhausted. I feel like my body has been hollowed out. Gretel spread out his limbs and lay on the soft green grass, humming. In one day, he went around the bay, visited 4 isolated areas, and spawned vegetation 4 times. The 2 quarantine zones targeted the poor, producing a wide range of people in large quantities, but the quality did not need to be too high. Basically, the fence is made of ordinary grass and trees, and the flowers and plants that soothe the mind are at the apprentice level, which is strong enough. A quarantine area targets handicraftsmen, craftsmen, and wealthy businessmen, and the scope of its creation is only 1/4 of that of a quarantine area for poor people. However, these people are physically strong and often have some magic props at the bottom of the box, so the quality of the vegetation they produce is slightly higher. The last one was aimed at the Dutch nobles who came to repair, receive treatment and repair their ships. This quarantine area. Why are you so tired, why are you so tired? I spawned a whole mountain of grass and thorns in the land of inheritance, and I was not this tired. That's because, in the land of heritage, most of the spell casting costs are borne by the oak trees. Bernard silently cursed, propped up his knees, and bent down to see his boss. Not bad, my face is a bit paler, I'm sweating a bit more, and my voice is shaking a bit. But he can still moan and complain, which shows that his strength has not been completely drained. According to the standard that the boss usually said, there should be no need to drag it to rescue. Boss, would you like to give you a drink of that or something, glucose water? Don't want. Greet screamed as if his tail had been stepped on. Are you kidding me? In my previous life, when I was tired from surgery, had hypoglycemia, and was shaky, I drank glucose water. In this life, when I was tired from performing spells and lying down, I drank glucose water again? Do you want me to give you a bottle of 10% glucose water and 20 ml of high sugar water? What have I done wrong to deserve to be tortured by this thing? Glucose water doesn't taste good, it's weird, and it makes your throat ache after drinking it. Although in this world, all the glucose is produced by my mage tower, so people will not say, is this bottle of water included in the surgery fee? However, it does not change the taste of it, which is disgusting. Just as he shouted, his mouth felt cold, and then there was a click, and the upper and lower jaws were pinched directly. Gretel was caught off guard, and when his upper and lower teeth closed, a burst of juice burst out, and the sour taste penetrated the sky. Gretel's eyes widened and his cheeks twitched. He subconsciously wanted to vomit, but he couldn't vomit out and wanted to swallow. Cough, 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 cough. No, I almost choked in my trachea. Greet turned over and lay on the lawn, coughing heartbreakingly for a long time. Sarala squatted next to him and patted his back. Oops, ouch, I'm sorry, I was quick, are you okay now? Are you feeling better? Gretel coughed for a long time before raising his head with tears in his eyes. Support the ground and take a few breaths. Sarala, where did you get this fruit, who gave it to you, why is it exactly the same as the one the teacher used to tease me last time? It wakes you up immediately when you enter it, and it has an immediate effect, and the effect of replenishing your mental power is outstanding. Even before he finished eating this piece of fruit, he already felt that his brain was clear, his limbs were strong, and he stopped sweating. What? Feeling like your body is being hollowed out? Non-existent. Hee, it was your teacher who gave it to me last time I went back to my hometown with you. Sarala squatted beside him and chuckled. The elder said that these fruits were carefully cultivated by him. If you eat one, all your exhausted mental energy will be replenished. Don't waste it, chew it quickly. No matter what you chew, your teeth will become soft. Will such sour fruit corrode tooth enamel? Tooth enamel, once corroded, cannot be regenerated. Hey, maybe there is a way in this world to directly activate the treatment to grow a tooth? No matter what, Gretel visited all the quarantine points in the bay in one day. Determine personnel arrangements, material reserves, and operational procedures, and identify and fill gaps. Finally, the day came to test the results. Quick! Quick, quick! Everyone move! The ship is coming. On the watchtower at the entrance of the village, the soldiers on guard duty shouted loudly. While shouting, he took an unknown object, perhaps a gong or a wash basin, and banged it. Suddenly, a group of soldiers and a group of villagers emerged from the isolation point. Under the guidance of the soldiers, the villagers moved tables, moved chairs, carried various materials, opened the water gate, and discharged water. In the specially set up kitchen, curls of cooking smoke also lit up. There was quite a commotion. Before the work was over, a weather-beaten wooden boat was already swaying and docked at the dock. This ship is quite big. I don't know how many people are going to get off. Next to Greet, the presiding mage stood on tiptoes, stretched his neck, and looked from a distance. Greet shook his head slightly. It's not big, only about 100 tons. It's a big deal to hold 100 people, at most, it's just 200. His voice slowly drew out. On the deck of the wooden ship, a large group of people rushed out, walking nervously down the gangplank. A group of people disembarked, and another group, and another group, and another group. Well, my previous estimate of the shipping mortality rate was based on 2 months of maritime transport, and more people needed to reach the destination. How many days does it take to sail from the Netherlands to the Kingdom of Kent? The narrowest point of the Hall Strait is only a few dozen kilometers. It can be reached in 1 day with good winds and rivers. It will be a little farther to Inverness, but in any case, it will not take more than 10 days. In this case, the passenger fatality rate will be greatly reduced, so naturally it can be pretended. Gretel took a deep breath and took a few steps forward. I saw large numbers of poor people with weathered and frightened faces being driven down like ducks. As soon as we stepped onto the trestle, soldiers came up to us and shouted, "Go this way! Go this way! Get in line, don't crowd, I'm talking about you." Pushing and pushing, squeezing and squeezing. The presiding mage hurriedly greeted him. Next to him, the priest who had just arrived at the isolation point also stood up and activated the fortune observation technique without saying a word. The one in the middle of the third row. The one in grey clothes and lame on one leg. The second one from the left in the fourth row. The one holding the child. The first one on the right in the seventh row. The priest points to the head, the mage throws mage trick, and the soldier is responsible for pulling people. For a moment, the crowd was crying and shouting loudly. Some people were running, some were blocking them, and some were desperately trying to get into the crowd. The soldier responsible for pulling people shouted at the top of his lungs. "Don't run! Don't run! These are all sick. We pull them out and treat them individually, and they can be put back after they are cured." No one listens to him. In fact, Greet listened to the feedback from the poor people, crying and shouting, and it was a mess. He felt that the soldiers who gave the orders did not speak the same language. Too bad, as expected, I am inexperienced and I failed to consider the language problem. Alas, for many things, only by experiencing them in practice can you determine where your problems lie. Gretel sighed silently. He took a few steps forward, without standing up and shouting, and quietly half-knelt on the ground. "Press your hands on the blades of grass and pray silently." After a while, a soft breeze blew from the land to the port. Wherever it went, everyone took a deep breath subconsciously and showed a calm, peaceful smile. Greet then stood up. He threw himself a flying spell and flew to the front of the trestle, looking down from a high position. Without even speaking a word, he already received a lot of odd looks. Being able to fly is king. Being able to fly is power. Even the ignorant poor people don't know that this is a unique skill for wizards above level 5. A wizard of this level can kill them with a big fireball. They also know that this is a strong man who they can't afford to offend. Who can speak the Dutch language? Greet looked down, added a amplification technique to himself, and asked slowly. The soldiers and villagers looked at each other, rustling, and all shrank back. Finally, only a little man stood up timidly. "Sir, I know a little bit. I worked in Inverness port and delivered water to the fishing boats coming over there. I can chat with them for a few words." It was related to the economy, and there was a large crowd of people on the dock, so Greet had no time to listen to him talk about the origin of this foreign language. He simply waved his hand. "Stand up and be responsible for translating for them. Who among you can speak the language of the Kingdom of Kent? Stand up and help with the work, and add a piece of bread to each meal." This time it was to the poor people of the Netherlands. As a mage, there are all kinds of spells behind him, so switching languages is always beneficial. Gretel doesn't even need to spend additional time to learn another language. Fortunately, many of these poor people in the Netherlands were fishermen traveling between the two places, or had dealings with merchants from the Kingdom of Kent. Greet shouted, and he did not even need a heavy reward. He only spent one piece of bread and recruited 7 or 8 people. "You, put that person in charge and repeat his words to your compatriots. Maintain their order." Someone came forward to communicate, and the crowd gradually became quiet. The presiding mage breathed a sigh of relief and quickly arranged for someone to carry the patient out and send him to a small house on the other side, waiting for the herbalist to come and see the doctor. The crowd continued to move forward. Before it calmed down much, another area started commotion ahead. In front of the separate bathroom for men and women, an old lady with disheveled hair and torn clothes rushed out. "Don't go in, they're going to take off our clothes. They're going to shave our heads." With a crash, the crowd exploded. Those who were already close to the bathroom turned around and ran back. Those who were not yet close to the bathroom ran to both sides, to the springboard, to the boat. Thump, thump, thump. Amidst the sounds of stampeding and crying, Gretel glanced around and saw at least 3 people falling from the edge of the pier. Why bother, why bother? The water in the bathhouse is still a little hot, but the water at the beach is ice cold. He didn't even want to be comforted at this time. Seeing a mage and a priest below each step back, he recalled the levels of these two people and pointed at them. Spider web technique. Control the person first, and then slowly convince him. Whether it's physical persuasion or magic persuasion, first of all, don't let me run away and trample on you, creating a bunch of cases. I participated in Kidian's monthly ticket wishing event. From the 29th to the 31st, as long as I can collect 900 votes, I will get an additional 10% monthly ticket bonus. There are 3,000 votes this month. 4 additional chapters will be updated. I heard that the last 3 days at the end of the month have the most monthly votes. Everyone, please work hard. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, and ask for all kinds of things. Thanks to @EarthShadowKnight for the 5,000 starting coins reward. Thanks @nickname already exists. Warning tip, 500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 878. Take off your clothes and wash them all in the water. If you are so dirty, you are not allowed to live in the house or eat. If you don't take a shower, you will starve to death outside. No one wants your clothes. Everyone has new clothes and all the dirty clothes are washed. My hair is all shaved. It's all tangled up, do you want fleas to run around? Children under 3 years old follow their mother. Boys over 3 years old go to the men's bathroom. Someone will watch the child. Amidst the roars, curses, screams, and body collisions, Greet covered his head with a headache. Why is it so difficult for these refugees to be obedient? Everything is clearly prepared for them. Obviously everything is for their own good. Obviously, there is really water in the 2 separate bathrooms for men and women, 60 centimeters deep, with disinfectant tablets put in proportionally. It's not something weird. It's not the kind of building that looks like a bathroom from the outside but looks like a strange place inside. The only thing I ask of you is to wash yourself up. Ah, why is such a big boy here? A scream suddenly erupted from the women's bathroom. Immediately afterwards, he was suppressed by an even louder yell. How old? How old? My son is only 6 years old. His father is not here. Don't you have children? You will never be able to have children in your life. Gretel held up her forehead and made a please gesture to Sarah, asking her to go in and get it done. In any case, it was announced just now that boys over the age of 3 should go to the men's bathroom, and this cannot be violated. As soon as it became quiet here, another shout broke out in the men's bathroom where there were more people. Who, don't poop in the pool. Gretel. Just, really, very tired. Throughout the day, all kinds of bizarre accidents made him feel like he was back in the emergency department in his previous life. Alas, there is a saying that the energy spent on epidemic prevention is 1, and the energy used on other things is more than 10, okay. Fortunately, apart from being sad, Greed has not seen any other loopholes in epidemic prevention for the time being. Everyone should eat and sleep. Someone should check their health status one by one every day. If they are sick, they should be looked after. There should be a place to move out and isolate. Except for the forced head shaving policy, which has received a lot of complaints, everything else is fine. He spent 2 days at this quarantine site and another day at another quarantine site for poor people. When I wanted to observe for another day, the farthest isolation area came over to invite someone. Mage Nordmark, go and have a look. We can't stand it any longer. Can't stand it anymore? What is the situation? There is a malignant infectious disease. Are the local healers overwhelmed? Gretel was stunned. In addition to the entire area he is responsible for, the council has arranged healers at each isolation point. The 2 points mainly for the poor are arranged by a natural priest and a herbalist. Mainly based on isolation screening and drug treatment, supplemented by a small amount of magical treatment. If a large-scale outbreak occurs, then call for support from the rear. An isolation point for handicraftsmen, craftsmen, and wealthy businessmen was arranged with a god of war priest and a herbalist. Mainly based on drug treatment. If you really want magical treatment, please pay. Another isolation point for the Dutch noble army was staffed by magicians from the medical branch. Of course, it was also routinely paired with a herbalist. Ordinary soldiers would naturally drink some medicine as treatment, but as for the nobles, for the sake of the magician appearing in person, they should and will be more disciplined. These healers are the front line. If they can't stand it any longer, they call Greet, who roams around the area to inspect the situation. If Greet still can't stand it, call the existing healers from the Earl of Inverness over in large numbers. Judging from this process, Greet thought to himself, he was considered to be on the second line? Or it can't be considered the second line, the herbalist is the first line, the spellcaster is the second line, and when it's his turn, it should be considered the third line. As for other healers in the territory, they are supported by brother hospitals or nearby hospitals. So what's going on now? Diarrhea, fever, vomiting, pimples, or dash. Gretel turned over and sat on Appa's back, reaching out his hand to the person. In a hurry, walk and talk at the same time, hurry up. However, the visitor looked up at the tall silver moon deer, taller than his head, and then looked at the 3 people crowded on the deer's back, grimaced, and took a step back. I was so scared that I didn't dare to go up at all. Gretel sighed helplessly, and had no choice but to cast a spell to summon a phantom pony, and pointed at the person coming. Seeing that he still didn't dare, he opened his palm slightly, and the activation rope stretched and coiled, eager to try. Don't be afraid, the phantom horse is always very stable when carrying people. If it is really unstable, I will tie you to it. He smiled and stretched out his hand to signal, and the visitor had to use his hands and feet to carefully climb onto the horse. The 2 riders rode side by side, and Gretel threw another soothing spell. The visitor finally calmed down and complained like a barrage. They refused to abide by the isolation regulations. They refused to stay in the room obediently. They want this now, that now, and they run out without paying attention. There are only a few of us, so we can't watch them at all. Today I thought the village was too small to walk around, and everyone wanted to run out. Master Mancini led people to stop them, but however, either it cannot be suppressed or it cannot be defeated. Greet nodded and patted the silver moon deer on the neck. Apa, run. We're in a hurry. Apa raised his head, hissed, and ran forward. The phantom colt was chasing after him with all its hooves, but there was something wrong with the basic configuration of the magic and it couldn't catch up at all. I only heard the sound getting farther and farther behind. Mage Nordmark, please slow down, this horse can't keep up, it's going to break down, it's going to fall apart. Gretel shook his sweat silently. But time was running out, and he had no time to take care of the person who reported the news. At worst, he could just let him go slowly. The silver moon deer stepped forward with all 4 hooves and galloped at full speed. The cold wind blew past my ears, and the huge white deer ran as fast as it could fly. After a while, the small village at the bottom of the bay and the isolation point converted from the village were visible in the distance. And the boiling noise also overflowed and was blown directly to his ears by the sea breeze. We want to go out? We want to go out? Are we being held here as prisoners? Why should we stay at home? The agreement we made with the Parliament when we came here did not include this clause. My dog is suffocating to death. I want to walk the dog. I want to go out for a walk. We are nobles. We are not those mud-legged people. We can be shut down as you please. There was a lot of yelling and swearing. Greet sighed secretly. During the previous epidemic, citizens were encouraged to consciously stay at home without leaving their homes. There were TVs, computers, the internet, and various games at home. Many people were unable to bear it. There are those who rush in, there are those who climb over walls, there are those who go fishing without heeding dissuasion. It requires the community management, security guards, and community volunteers to yell and sometimes beat and scold before they can be driven back. Let me tell you something, I only realized when I was in isolation that the smell was really unpleasant. The silver moon deer continued to approach. The shouts were getting louder and louder, mixed with the mage in charge of the quarantine point, who was explaining in a hesitant way. I'm not going to lock you up, someone among you has typhoid fever. In order to ensure that others are not infected, we must first isolate you in groups to protect most people. If you are sick, you can't cure it. A healing spell can solve it, so why should we be locked up? I'm a knight? A knight? How could I get this disease? The sound got higher and louder. Suddenly, a sharp sword sound pierced the air, followed immediately by an explosion. Gretel's face froze. In the previous world, everyone was equal, and the value of force was basically equal, and it could be controlled by volunteers and police. In this world, everyone is unequal. He urged the silver moon deer to leap high, fly directly over the fence, and land heavily in the center of the field. At the same time, he fluttered his hands and brushed a pile of armor on himself and Bernard. Cyrilla. Cyrilla also needs one. Although she won't need it, she can't ignore it. I am the general person in charge of isolation and epidemic prevention in this area. After finishing the armor, he shouted loudly. At the same time, he stood in front of his magician and faced a group of soldiers with his head raised. If you have any questions, just ask me. It's okay to ask, but not to cause trouble. Don't toast and you'll be fined if you don't eat. Clang 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 clang. Bernard quickly jumped off the silver moon deer, broke out the big bone stick and leaned to the side. Then, he quickly took out the armor and quickly put it on. Cyrilla took off her long bow, attached a long arrow with cold light, and pointed straight ahead. Without looking back, he summoned a few mage hands to help Bernard put on the armor. The huge silver moon deer lowered its head slightly and pointed its 4-meter-wide horns at the group of knights. The silver light on the horns flashes, showing that this giant deer not only has powerful physical impact, but also has certain magical abilities. What are you going to do? The leader of the group of warriors subconsciously took a step back. This white deer, judging from its size and aura, is probably about the same level as him. The mage who can control the white deer, as well as the elf beauty and the barbarian warrior. Can't beat it, definitely can't beat it. After withdrawing, he remembered that the two parties had an agreement and his life would not be in danger. Take another step forward and raise your voice. I am the captain of the Sea Pearl, a branch of the Earl of Dutremid family. Those standing here are all lords and knights, and we demand treatment in line with nobles. We cannot be locked up. All the soldiers who rushed out to protest nodded. One of them raised his voice. By the way, who are you? Why do we have to listen to what you say? I am Gret Nordmark, an 8th-level magician and an 8th-level natural priest. Gret raised the oak staff in his hand. The setting up of this isolation and quarantine point, as well as the entire isolation and quarantine plan, were proposed by me. If you have any questions, you can talk to me directly. Don't rush through the checkpoints and violate the regulations. The crowd fell silent slightly. Behind the queue of soldiers, a middle-aged man's eyes flashed. He lowered his head quietly, and walked backwards into the crowd. I participated in Gideon's monthly ticket wishing event. From the 29th to the 31st, as long as I can collect 900 votes, I will get an additional 10% monthly ticket bonus. There are 3,000 votes this month. 4 additional chapters will be updated. There are now 122 votes, and there are still 778 votes left. I heard that the last 3 days at the end of the month have the most monthly votes. Everyone, please work hard. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, and ask for all kinds of things. Thanks at Mobi for the 100 rating points. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 879. How many people have typhoid? Seeing that the other party's attitude softened, and at least he stopped causing trouble directly, Greet also softened his tone a little. He half turned his face and asked the healing mage behind him, who breathed a sigh of relief and took 2 steps forward. Who are the people who have typhoid fever? Are there any knights? Are there any mid-level or above professionals? Have they been quarantined? Most of them are sailors. The healer was making a detour, first going around Bernard, trying to get closer, but was swept away by Appa's tail, reflexively retreating, and then going around from the other side. The circle drawn out has a radius of at least 2 meters. There was no other way. Even though there was a master sitting on his back, he didn't dare to bet that the high-level monster would suddenly become unhappy and hit him in the face with a hoof. Gretel simply jumped off the deer's back, patted Appa's front legs, and let him go to the edge to play by himself. Listen to the therapist's report again. There were a total of 3 ships with 281 people. 5 of them fell ill when they got off the ship, including 4 sailors and 1 knight. The knight was seriously injured. In accordance with the regulations, I isolated the healthy people and lived in isolation, but 7 more people became ill. This infection rate is quite high. Greet quickly calculated, well, the incubation period of typhoid fever is usually 7 to 14 days, with a fluctuation range of 3 to 60 days. If there are no carriers like Typhoid Mary, who detoxify for life and do not get sick for life, then generally speaking, patients in the incubation period can be found after being shut down for half a month. While I was thinking about it, the other person couldn't wait to jump in and add information. The knight who claimed to be a branch of the Earl's family was particularly excited. Those are sailors. Yes, they are all sailors. We knights don't have typhoid fever. The knight's physique is not seriously ill or injured. How could he be defeated by such a gadget? That's not unreasonable. Whether the human body becomes ill after ingesting typhoid bacilli is largely related to the person's defenses. With strong defense, typhoid bacilli cannot break through the gastrointestinal barrier and will not get sick. But, this defense refers to the gastric acid barrier, not just the body. Gretel looked around and raised his voice. So what you're saying is that sailors should be quarantined, but you knights don't have to be quarantined. His words spread far and wide with the help of amplification technology. Most of the knights in the back row had strange expressions on their faces. And at the other end of the village, from a distance, there was also a noise. It was obvious that the number of knights did not account for a high proportion of the total number of people. But let the knights only speak for themselves and not for ordinary sailors. Very good. How to bring people next. Even if you are a knight, you can't do everything yourself, and you still need sailors to help with the errands. Especially on a ship, no matter how powerful a knight is, he cannot control all the sails and fire 7 or 8 cannons. Gretel smiled. He clapped his hands, attracted everyone's attention, and said loudly. First of all, let's make sure that ordinary sailors cannot resist typhoid fever. We can only minimize the possibility of infection through isolation and quarantine. Isn't that right? But someone in the back wanted to argue. Gretel interrupted. No, but if you want everyone to live together and wander around every day, we have no objection. But you must know that if you do this, the number of patients will increase rapidly. Moreover, if you do not obey the management of the council, we don't bear the cost of treatment. He bent his fingers one by one. Treatment fees, nursing fees, funeral expenses in case of death, please settle the payment before leaving. The knights' faces turned dark. On a ship with hundreds of people, if quarantined, 3 or 4 might get sick. If not quarantined, there would be 8, 9, or a dozen, one after another. How many times more people will get sick, how many times more treatment costs, and still have to pay out of pocket? What a joke. Then someone whispered and wanted to protest. Should the sick be imprisoned? The good people should be imprisoned too. Even us knights must be imprisoned like prisoners. We are going to the tavern. We are going to stroll around the city. We are going to... Shut up. The elf lady is here, someone next to him pulled him. The defender shut up immediately, and Greet silently held back a look. Very good. At this rate, you still want to visit the customs industry in the city? Close contact is the easiest way to spread diseases. Fortunately, we can control it. If we can't control it, haha. He answered without thinking. First of all, typhoid fever has an incubation period, which means you have been infected but have not yet developed the disease. Secondly, in the early stage of typhoid fever, when the symptoms are relatively mild, you may only have some headache, fever, and dry cough. If you are not a professional healer, many people will think they have a cold. We don't have colds either. The crowd continued to murmur. Gretel raised his eyes and glanced. Again, you knights live on the same ship as the sailors for a long time. Even if you are strong and suppressed, you may still be infected with the disease, it doesn't take a few days. Make sure everyone is healthy and let you out to prevent the infection from spreading to the city. Are you going in? The crowd was chattering and muttering, and it was obvious that some people were still unconvinced. Gretel has ignored them and turned to the mage who presides over this isolation point and is responsible for treatment. Of course, knights and nobles must be given the treatment they deserve. Food, furnishings and bedding can be adjusted as appropriate. For dog walking, villagers can also walk the dog on their behalf, provided that it does not bite. People. No bite, no bite. Philip is very obedient, the knight with the dog said hurriedly, whoever is willing to help me walk the dog, I can give you a reward. 1 silver coin a day, is that enough? Looking at the faces of the surrounding villagers and soldiers, it was obvious that enough was enough. Greet nodded with satisfaction. Knights are indeed physically stronger and are less likely to contract diseases. If ordinary warriors have to be quarantined for 7 days, for knights, 5 days should be enough. There were muffled cheers from the crowd. Gretel's face was straightened, and he faced the crowd. It starts from the beginning of isolation. If you run out on your own, it starts from tomorrow. Of course, if the ship can leave within 5 days, you can leave with the ship normally. This combination of reprimands, threats, and small favors finally suppressed this group of people. After waiting for a few more days, the ship was finally repaired, and all the crew, except the seriously ill one, boarded the ship collectively. Gretel watched the 3 ships sail away and breathed a sigh of relief. Return to your residence and continue writing a summary. During the isolation and quarantine process, the resistance of knights and professionals to diseases should be taken into consideration, and the isolation policy should be adjusted in a targeted manner. You need to go back to the headquarters to check the relevant disease records and treatment records. After half a month of inspection, the report was submitted to Nevis, and Greet was quickly recruited back to conduct the next stage of adjustment research. At the same time, his relevant information also arrived in Nevis along with the returning ship, and was then passed on to the Royal Army and the Holy See Inquisition in the Netherlands. Gret Nordmark, Grand Inquisitor Gravela of the Netherlands, looked through the newly sent information from his subordinates, his eyes indifferent, neither happy nor angry. He is an important target, and he is indeed on the list. Unfortunately, it has nothing to do with our current mission. Pass the information back and say that this blasphemer finally left Nevis. Kill him now. Good chance. If someone comes from behind, we can provide convenience for them. The intelligence was rushed to the rear and passed to the rear by a special person. In about half a month, a special assassination team lurked on the ship and quietly crossed the ocean to the Kingdom of Kent. At this time, Greed had finished a round of research and returned again to conduct a second round of inspections at the isolation point on the coast. That's him. It must be him who came to patrol the village. Such a big white deer, the target is too obvious, there is absolutely no way we can admit it. The church's spies lay on the ridge, overlooking the village below, and lowered their voices to give directions to the visitors. 5 operators stood beside him, looking down as he pointed. A thin figure with a hood on his head, even if he was standing, he subconsciously wanted to shrink into a ball. Only he and the spies were the closest, the others subconsciously stayed away from them. The second one was tall and strong. When he stood there, his chest muscles were about to burst his leather armor. He spoke to the old man behind him while leaning half sideways, his waist slightly arched downward, as if he was trying to make it less difficult for the old man to listen. The third man was almost as tall as him, his arms looked particularly long, and his shoulders were particularly thick. He was carrying a long stick taller than a man on his back, and a dusty bag on his waist. His eyes were like lightning as he looked around. The fourth one, the old man who looked like the leader of the crowd, had his eyebrows lowered and his face full of charity. There is a long circle of rosary beads around the wrist. Even when someone points out the target of action, it is still twirling in circles. As for the fifth, it is further away from everyone. He was dressed in a black robe, covering him from head to toe, and even his eyes were almost invisible. A gust of wind came, and the cold and rotten breath on his body made people sick. The target has been traveling between several nearby villages for 2 to 3 days at a time. The spy's voice was quick and faintly excited. Calculating the time, he should move somewhere tomorrow. You are here by chance. There is only one road out of this village, and there is a branch road after passing the mountain pass below. Should we enter the village and take action, or should we wait until he leaves the village? Wait until we leave the village. We can make traps first. The thin hooded man was the first to suggest something. As he spoke, his fingers were rubbing and flicking rapidly. Apparently making traps and the like was his specialty. Another long-armed man nodded upon hearing this. Yes, it would be easier to tie him up with a trap and shoot him. There are many people in the village and there are many obstacles, making it difficult to aim. I don't have any objections, another strong man said lightly. As he said this, he touched the long sword on his back with his backhand. The thick horse-killing sword was enough to chop everything into pieces when swung. It was the same wherever he hit it. 2 votes were in favor and 1 abstained, which is basically a foregone conclusion. Everyone looked at the leading old man, just waiting for him to speak. Unexpectedly, the last man in black robe suddenly said. Confused. I participated in Gideon's monthly ticket wishing event. From the 29th to the 31st, as long as I can collect 900 votes, I will get an additional 10% monthly ticket bonus. There are 3,000 votes this month. 4 additional chapters will be updated. There are only 249 votes so far, and there are still 651 votes left. It's the last 2 days, everyone, please work hard. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, and ask for all kinds of things. Thanks to @bookfriend 16042919384139 for the reward of 3000 starting coins. Next time, Uncle, please use the web page to reward large amounts. It would be too painful to reward directly with the mobile phone. Apple will take away a big piece of it, and it will be delayed for 3 months. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 880. As soon as the black-robed old man spoke, the eyes of several people around him couldn't help but change slightly. The hooded man shrank away subconsciously, realized something was wrong, and quickly moved back to his original position. The strong man tightened his grip on the hilt of the sword. The long-armed man touched the pouch at his waist and moved his fingers slightly, as if he wanted to draw something out. Only the old man with the rosary wrapped around his wrist remained silent. Not only did he not make a sound, he did not even move his eyes. He lowered his eyebrows and lowered his eyes, as if he was just reciting scriptures praising the Lord wholeheartedly. What did the man in black robe say? How did the people around me react? Sorry, didn't hear that at all. The old man in black robe was familiar with the reaction of his teammates and did not feel dissatisfied. He rolled his eyes sinisterly, more black eyeballs than white ones, and said coldly, "Don't you all look at the target's information? Healers, soft-hearted, concerned about the lives and health of civilians, where can such a person take action to best tie his hands and feet? Of course it is among a group of villagers." In an instant, the 3 teammates, including the spy, looked at the old man in black robes with something wrong. The old man in black robe continued to plan coldly. Of course, it's best to throw a few patients among the poor. It's difficult and dangerous, and it will consume his healing power. It's best to catch him while he is concentrating on treating people. It's best when his power is consumed more severely. Opportunity, take action suddenly. Then what? The strong warrior took a step forward, a little unevenly. He lowered his voice, for fear of alarming the surrounding people, but there was still a little anger boiling in his tone. If he misses, use civilians as cover and bet he won't hit hard to counterattack. So what? The old man in black robe rolled his eyes angrily. We are here to perform a mission. Shouldn't we try our best to complete the mission and then go back alive? If you want to show mercy to those untouchables, don't drag us down. You. Brother Wilson, pay attention to your attitude. The old man with rosary beads in his hand spoke for the first time. But instead of facing an old man in black robe, he faced a strong man. The target we want to judge is a sinful heretic who has repeatedly blasphemed the glory of the Lord. In order to achieve the goal, we do not rule out using some means. What's more, the heretics below are all people who refuse the glory of the Lord. The strong man shut up, lowered his head, and made a prayer gesture on his chest. The old man whispered, "For the glory of the Lord of Radiance. For the glory of the Lord of Radiance." Everyone responded in unison. Under the guidance of the spies, the 5 people filed down the mountain along the thorny path. Not long after leaving the top of the mountain, a small bird with colorful feathers flew up from the trees, chirped, and fluttered its wings away. After a while, a middle-aged magician with a rosy complexion quietly appeared on the top of the empty mountain. A colorful bird with colorful feathers landed on his shoulder, chirping indiscriminately. The magician tilted his head and listened. He could not see how he sang, changed his gestures, or set up a magic circle. There was a wave of water in front of him, and the figures of the 6 people before him appeared. The voices are traced back at the same time: who said what first, who said last, what disputes occurred, how to make the final decision. Every word, no omission. Oh my God! The middle-aged magician looked on with a smile. While watching, he nodded, shook his head, and sighed. There's nothing wrong with that, Mage Nordmark has this temper. Hey, should we let these people pass? He tilted his head and pressed the bird on his shoulder. The bird's body immediately froze, and its feathers flickered, revealing a metallic color. The middle-aged magician said to the bird, "With us watching, we can ensure safety, which is better than if he stumbles when he goes out to practice on his own. It's better not to do it." The front of him suddenly dimmed and brightened, and a woman in a long skirt with a serious face suddenly appeared. She listened attentively to a few words of retrospection and shook her head. "Little Gretel has a very soft heart. If a group of civilians are killed or injured because of him, he will die of discomfort. It is better to do something halfway and let them encounter them outside the village. You are his senior sister, you have the final say." The middle-aged magician spread his hands in a good-tempered manner. "Then let's go down together and set up some obstacles for them. Or find a reason to bring out the Nordmark mage and let them encounter them outside." "No, I'll just go." The woman in the long skirt, the 16th level lightning mage Philby, a disciple of the Lord of Thunder, waved her hand carelessly. "It's hard for you to patrol this area, so I won't cause any trouble to you. These few people are no more than level 13. I can handle them all by myself. Then I'll leave first." The middle-aged magician waved his hand, and disappeared in a flash. Senior Sister Philby stared at the bottom of the mountain for a moment, then curled her lips. "Should we let a few of them go? Little Gretel is weak in fighting, and although the little silver dragon next to him is strong, he is inexperienced. There are too many people let go at once, and I'm afraid they won't be able to take care of them." Her figure flickered, and in a moment, she disappeared on the top of the mountain. On the mountain road, the spy led the group of 5 people to walk rustlingly. As they walked, they whispered, "The closest way is from here, but the road is a bit dangerous. There is a curve ahead, which is very narrow, and there is a cliff on one side. Please be careful. Don't talk too much, let's go," the hooded man shouted impatiently. As a stalker, this mountain road is nothing to him. He can walk freely on it at level 1, and run quickly at level 3. If it weren't for the fact that spies are hard to find in the Kingdom of Kent, we wouldn't be able to let this guy chatter. The air conditioning is getting heavier and heavier in the back." The hooded man shivered and simply stretched out his hand. "I'll carry you. You point me in the direction." "Why?" The spy ducked subconsciously. Just like that, he stepped on the air and rolled down. The hooded man was startled and threw himself down to pull it away, but his feet stumbled for no apparent reason. With such a stumble, the hand was just missing. "Ah!" The spy screamed and rolled down. The hooded man quickly jumped up and chased down. Unexpectedly, his luck was a bit bad this time. When he found the person, the spy was lying prone in the forest. Apart from twitching, he didn't even moan. The hooded man secretly said something bad and reached out to pick him up. It was only when he was carrying it that he saw a long hard branch thrust straight into his eye socket, sinking deeply into it. Red and white, at least half a foot can be applied. This. He helplessly carried the person and jumped a few times before turning back to the top of the mountain road. The old man holding the rosary only glanced at it and shook his head. "Hopeless. Saying this, move forward and never look back." The old man in black robe squatted down with great interest, spread his fingers and covered the spy's forehead. The black robe rustled for a while, and countless tiny black insects crawled out and poured into the spy's features. The hooded man shuddered, his feet scraped against the ground, and he backed away cautiously. After taking 2 steps back and just about to turn around the mountain road, I heard a sentence from the front. "You stay and lead the way for him." "Yes, Lord Bishop." The hooded man bowed his head respectfully. There were heavy steps ahead, and the 2 warriors walked forward, one behind the other, guarding the bishop. The hooded man sighed secretly, and had no choice but to stand quietly against the mountain wall where the old man in black robe could see him. "Please hurry up. You should be faster." After reciting it silently for an unknown number of times, my heart suddenly shook wildly, as if it had missed a beat. The hooded man was shocked. He wanted to make a sound, shout, or warn, but he felt weak and could not make any movement. Before the last bit of consciousness disappeared, he saw the old man in black robe silently falling to the ground silently. Oh, little Gretel's heart current spell is really useful. In the silence, a gentle laughter sounded. Master Philby entered quietly, looked at the three bodies lying on the ground, and nodded with satisfaction. It consumes much less than similar fatal spells. What's even more rare is that it is silent and leaves no trace. Well, if I wanted to defeat these two people instantly in the past, I would have to use at least 2 level 5 spells. The spell Gretel is only level 2. Even if the current intensity is increased in order to penetrate the protective barrier of high-level professionals, it is only increased to level 3. It is still impossible to kill a lot of people. The effect of hitting the opponent's heart by surprise is outstanding. Well, at least for these two people whose professional levels are estimated to be only level 9 or 10, and whose bodies are not strong enough, they can be knocked down perfectly in one blow. She stepped on the void and moved forward step by step. A piece of electric light spread out from under the feet, touching the old man in black robe and the man in the hood respectively. Then he casually stretched out his hand, and the two of them stood up and walked away in another direction. Okay, clean up the traces, create a false target, and eliminate their suspicions, she hummed with a smile, controlled the two bodies to turn 3 turns, and rolled down the mountain for a while before collecting them. Get up. Next, we have to see their movements and lure out little Gretel. She quietly disappeared and followed him again. Only halfway through, I saw the Holy Sea's action team following the footsteps and touching back. The warriors were in front and the archers were behind, guarding the bishop one after another, full of vigilance. The 16th level great magician who had experienced hundreds of battles pursed his lips and smiled. He put up a layer of barrier to cover up the spell fluctuations, and a teleportation spell dodges people from a distance. Arriving outside the small village where Greet worked, he changed his appearance and took out a piece of letterhead. An urgent message from the council, please give it to Master Nordmark. I have to go to the next stop. She slapped the guard's hand and urged the magic horse. In order to act realistically, she didn't even summon the phantom pony, but only summoned a magic horse that could be summoned by a single spell, and galloped away. After going around 2 bends, he cast the spell, became invisible again, and found a big rock to sit down comfortably. With the wind blowing, put out a pot of tea and 2 snacks, and start enjoying afternoon tea to your heart's content. Well, whether it's an encounter or an ambush, this is the only way to go. Little Gretel, you must work harder. I feel like I may not be able to get 3,000 monthly tickets this time, so I'm crying. Did you fail the first time you set up a vote-seeking goal? It is said that the lockdown in Shanghai will be lifted on June 1st, but here it is said that the prevention zone has been upgraded to a control zone. Different people in the neighborhood committee have different opinions. The street distributed another round of supplies today, and it seems that the lockdown will not be lifted for a while. Super crying. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 881. Greet sat precariously on the deer's back. With a grimace, he took something out of his pocket. Time barrier, the pendant given by your excellency, put it on. Elemental endurance is useless when it is useless, but it is of great use when it is useful. Song of Deep Blue, put on the bracelet given by your excellency, Tisk, it's so big and heavy that I can't even lift my arms, but water wall technique is really useful. Philosopher's Rose, put on the tie clip given by your excellency, if you don't have a tie, forget about it. Just clip it anywhere. It's a powerful tool to resist mental shock. Do you want to release the skeletons sent by His Excellency the Immortal? It's better to release them. Aonijin is also very good at fighting. If it doesn't work, you can still block it. Really, this is already the rear area, why would there be an enemy invasion and ask him to come over to support? What are the fleets and blockades in front doing to Eve? He can't fight. Although, Gretel also knew that as an 8th level mage, he should already be one of the strongest fighting forces in the nearby area. Even if Sarah doesn't transform into a dragon and join the battle, it shouldn't be a problem for him, Bernard, and Appa to cooperate with each other and defeat a team of 5 people at the same level. If you face relatively low level and large number opponents, you can even fire fireballs and bombard them indiscriminately. Of course, the premise of all this is to ensure that you survive. And survive? After 2 months of training by Old Morgan, as well as special training by the battle mage sent by the Parliament. After receiving countless beatings, Greet understood one thing deeply. People like him can't develop their fighting instincts even if they start practicing all night long. That's not something that happens in a day or two. It needs to be practiced over time, in the wild, in the city, and on the battlefield, risking your life. Some people grind it out, and some people die immediately. In the end, the advice given by Old Morgan and the battle mage was to follow the normal path of a mage steadily. Equip a full shield, and then install 7 or 8 trigger spells. When in danger, hide behind the warrior and then attack. Don't show off your talents, don't show off your skills. The kind of playstyle of teleporting, rushing to the center of the enemy to open the ice ring, and then teleporting back again is really not suitable for you. So Greet decided to listen to others and eat enough. After putting on all the magic props that can be worn, I started to apply defensive spells layer by layer. Slap the shield on yourself, slap the shield on Bernard, slap the shield on Apa, and slap the shield on Cyrilla deliberately. Oxygen. Forget about Onijin, the shields he knows are either of no use to Onijin, or have some counterproductive effects. Stone skin, increased resistance, beam deflection, arrow reversal, repelling shield, radiant shield, high mage armor. Well, after training during this period, I only have a variety of shield techniques, and I have become very proficient in them. Shields at level 3 and below can basically be cast instantly, and level 4 defensive spells have a casting time of no more than 3 seconds. Anyway, he has a strong spirit and a sufficient wallet, which means he has enough materials, so he can buy a few more shields. Sense of security add 1, add 1, add 1, add 1. With so many shields spawned, it should be possible to withstand the first wave, right? The target is on guard. In the jungle above the mountain road, 3 operatives from the glorious Holy See were lying behind the big trees, staring at the approaching figures without blinking. The bishop no longer turned his rosary beads, but lowered his eyes slightly, as if he was locking the 4 directions with his spiritual power. The archer has already removed the stick-like thing, put on the bowstring, and set up the arrow. At this moment, I was listening to what was going on below, but I didn't dare to look directly with my eyes. Only the warrior bowed slightly, took off the heavy sword and held it in his hand, gritting his teeth. After nearly an hour of searching, they finally confirmed that something happened to 2 teammates. Clothing fragments, bloodstains, traces of explosive battles. Although I don't know why they left or why they suddenly broke out, it is obvious that these 2 combat forces are no longer needed, and the enemy may have been alerted. I know that thieves are unreliable, and neither is that angry guy. In short, only people from the Holy See are reliable. The warrior muttered under his breath. The archer pursed his lips tightly, restraining himself from making any sound. The bishop remained silent, checked the blessing spells on everyone for the last time, and whispered. As soon as the mage passes the turning point below, take action immediately. Yes. Yes. A gentle response. The forest immediately became quiet, with only the gentle sound of the wind blowing the leaves, and even the sound of breathing was suppressed to a minimum. Everyone removed their eyes and glanced at the team below with their peripheral vision. The barbarian warriors were all covered in steel armor, carrying bone clubs, looking left and right, and striding through the curves. The mage was riding on the back of a giant deer, his shoulders were tense, and he was holding a small stick of something unknown in his hand. The elf beauty rode a snow-white unicorn, walking lightly behind the mage, looking around. The long bow on his back was like a decoration, with no intention of taking it off. 3 steps, 2 steps, 1 step. Legal order shock. The bishop suddenly opened his eyes and pointed downward. An invisible and formless magic shot out of his hand and headed straight for Gretel on the deer's back. Without waiting for confirmation of the effect, the second magical spell follows. Divine punishment. Greet, who was on the deer's back, had suddenly raised his head. The 2 shields were shattered at the same time, the endless ink pen lit up, and the philosopher's rose tie clip given by Your Excellency was attached to the skin of the chest, and it instantly became hot. There is an enemy. It's a spiritual attack. Did you react? It's not slow. On the rocks in the distance, Archmage Philby, who was watching from a distance with his magic, nodded with a smile. Whether it is relying on magic equipment, or whether someone else is using the attack spell without using magic spells and is just busy controlling it, you can react after the opponent's first attack and barely pass. Well, next, it depends on his fighting qualities. As soon as Greet slapped the silver moon deer, he immediately activated the teleportation technique. However, the speed of escape is already a little slower than the enemy's attack. A bright, thick white light struck from the air. The ray is deflected and broken. The repulsion shield is broken. The radiant shield is broken. The high mage's armor is broken. The level 6 divine punishment technique, used by the senior bishop of the Glory Holy See, is simple and simple, without any tricks. It looked like just a white light, but 4 consecutive layers of 3rd level and 4th level magic shields were continuously penetrated like paper. However, these shields are not all. Endless ink pen lights up slightly, mage armor bounces up and breaks, force field shield triggers, water wall technique triggers. The protective artifacts crafted by the legendary mage are truly extraordinary. Both are 4th level spells. Force field shield withstood the divine punishment for 1 breath, and then penetrated silently. Water wall technique had already filled its position, and withstood it for another 2 breaths. And within these 3 breaths, there was a sound of a string, accompanied by the shadow of an arrow that seemed to transcend the sound, heading straight for Gretel. Zheng. The archer's first long arrow leaves the string. The warrior grasped the heavy sword tightly, stepped on the ground, and rushed out bravely. However, it was too late. 3 breaths of time were enough for Cyrilla to react, and she jumped up angrily. Roar! A huge adult dragon, shining with silver light, appeared on the mountain road, with a breath of dragon in front of him. The arrow advanced, and then was wrapped in layers of extremely cold dragon breath and covered with layers of frost. When it hit the silver dragon, it had turned into a long stick. The silver dragon's scales dented slightly and rebounded. Cyrilla was motionless and unscathed. The soldier stopped urgently, but it was already too late. There was a crunch under the feet, and they were covered with a thick layer of frost. He stamped his feet with all his strength, broke away from the ice, turned around and ran away. Damn it, silver dragon! Where did the silver dragon come from? This battle is unwinnable. It's pretty good. Being able to reach the top of the little silver dragon is also a victory in the distance. Archmage Philby nodded with a smile. Little Gretel, let's go see you next. Don't capsize in the stinky ditch. Gretel. Gretel said nothing, jumped off the silver moon deer, and filled himself with defensive spells. Then, he squatted on the spot and curled up into a ball. Cyrilla, Just fight, don't step on me. Fortunately, the silver dragon was still somewhat rational despite his rage. Cyrilla flapped its wings and rose slightly upward, hanging at a low altitude of about 5 meters. The slender dragon's neck turned left and right, and followed the direction where the offensive smell was most concentrated, and took another mouthful of dragon's breath. The bishop's face was ashen. I don't know if it's the cold, the anger, or the fear. He himself is only level 12, the warrior at the front is level 13, and the archer is level 12, and the silver dragon in front of him looks like an adult dragon, definitely level 15 or higher. Why does such a dragon appear here? Whoever is responsible for gathering information and who is responsible for gathering information should be cut to pieces. You should mourn in the Lord's holy flame for eternity, and continue to mourn until the end of the world. The white light around him was extinguished, and the sacred shields were shattered layer by layer in the extremely cold dragon's breath. The bishop gritted his teeth, grabbed the rosary on his wrist, and pulled hard. The thread running through the rosary suddenly broke. These rosary beads did not fall to the ground one after another. Instead, they floated and formed a three-layered ring around him. The rays of light intertwined between the rosary beads, forming a mysterious magical array, which actually blocked the dragon's breath from outside. Come back. Let's go. He shouted. This rosary was passed down to him by his teacher, a 15th level cardinal, and had been blessed by him through years of prayer. In a short period of time, blocking the silver dragon's attack is not a problem. The warriors and archers turned and fled. 3 steps, 2 steps, 1 step, and he was about to hit the magical array. Behind him, there was a sound of broken branches and broken wood, and the silver dragon's huge front claws had already grabbed it. When the warrior had no choice but to turn around, swing his sword, and take a blow. Under the huge force of the shock, he vomited blood on the spot and fell backwards. 7 or 8 rosary beads were pressed by his body and left the formation at an angle. Seeing the magic circle begin to dim and shake, the bishop narrowed his eyes, took out a crown from his arms, and put it on his head viciously. The thorns under the crown pricked his skin on the spot, leaving a gush of blood and igniting white flames on the top of the crown. Cyrilla. Increase. Spell attack. A shout came from the mountain road. The silver dragon flapped its wings and rose again, leaving the top of the treetops. At the same time, a vine emerged from the ground, swaying and climbing, and crawled along the trouser legs and under the bishop's skirt. Ah! The white flame suddenly went out, and the bishop's whole body was bent into a shrimp shape, with his hands covering his legs, and his eyes bulging as hard as he could. And Gretel was kneeling on one knee, pressing the ground with one hand, and holding 2 test tubes between the fingers of the other hand. Fire explosion. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's the last day of May, let's make a final push for 3,000 votes. Thank you for your never-ending reward of 1,000 starting coins. Thanks Tudong Green Fruit for the 100 starting coins reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 882. The 4th level spell, Pyroblast. Among the 8 sects, the most lethal and destructive type of magic is the evocation system. 1 potassium permanganate and 1 nitrocellulose. Double bonus. Boom. This group of blazing white flames, in terms of power, jump directly to the upper level of 5th level magic. Well, not bad. Not bad. Archmage Philby concentrated on sensing the strength of the spell and nodded with great satisfaction. When you go out, you always have to have some tricks up your sleeve. How can someone under the Lord of Thunder not even have the ability to challenge a higher level? This big fireball's ability to attack head-on is already comparable to that of a level 10 or nearly 11 level mage. Next, it depends on your control ability, little Gretel. The fireball escapes. Laser. It hit the magical array light thread and exploded with a bang. Ice wall. Gretel was so anxious that she didn't even have time to shout Cyrilla, but just yelled the name of the spell. While roaring, he quickly wiped the space bag and took out another test tube. Ice wall. Thick white frost mist spread in front of him. The frost mist flows, condenses, and turns into a solid wall. The 4th level ice wall technique and the 4th level fireball technique are both of the evocation system, and their strength is exactly the same as that of a spear and a shield. As for the ice wall summoned by Gretel, is it specific in strength? Archmage Philby sensed the energy in front of her and narrowed her eyes slightly. This ice wall is a bit too strong, even if the little silver dragon just breathed twice and used the ice elements in the breath to build the ice wall, it is still a bit too strong, little Gretel, he used. His mental energy flickered slightly, and he almost laughed. This test tube is double-layered glass, evacuated on the inside, and wrapped with thick silk wool on the outside. It is exactly the kind often seen in Brother Baebo's laboratory. Liquid nitrogen tube. The young mages in the low-temperature group often hold one in each hand and perform performances of pouring it into their hands. No frostbite, hey, no frostbite. Do you dare to be a little creative? Archmage Philby secretly made up her mind to go back to her senior brother's laboratory for a walk. Anyone who has never thought of using liquid nitrogen to enhance ice spells should be hung up and beaten. Looking more closely, the ice wall summoned by Gretel is not a common rectangle, nor is it a hemisphere that is turned upside down to cover himself or the enemy. He summoned only 1/4 of the hemisphere, blocking himself firmly behind. On the other side, Cyrilla blew out another breath of dragon breath, which began to solidify as it approached the ice wall. Stretching and changing build another 1/4 of the hemisphere. It fits perfectly without any gaps. Archmage Philby smiled so hard that her eyes narrowed. This shot was a beautiful one, the coordination was so exquisite, the two little guys had such a tacit understanding. Moreover, this hemispherical bag. Didn't all the explosive power go towards the opposite side? Opposite him, the bishop's face was indeed ashen. He even threw out the rosary beads at the bottom of the box, and then used the crown of thorns to overdraw himself and activate his strength. He already had no will to continue fighting. Just give me a little while. Hold on for 10 breaths, no, just 5 breaths. Let me activate the teleportation magic and take myself back. If possible, take those two guys back. Who knew that the opponent would hit the vital point directly? That vine was so cunning that it suddenly hurt so much that he couldn't concentrate at all. With great difficulty, he panted and threw an instant magic spell to barely stop the pain. Just as his mind was gathered together, pure white fire surged towards his face, causing the divine magic array to collapse. Worse. No more teleportation. Teleportation, if you are afraid of dimensional anchors and start a battle with a high-level mage, the other party will throw 7 or 8 of them over without any explanation, and they will freeze an area and no one will be able to teleport casually. The second is fear of elemental disorder. Powerful elemental spells burst out and can cause chaos all around. In this case, it is difficult to say whether the transmission can be transmitted to the depths of the seabed or to the magma. Fight. The Lord Bishop's pupils were filled with blood for a moment. He raised his hands and pressed the crown of thorns on his head hard, causing the thorns on the crown to penetrate deeply into his scalp, causing blood to flow from his face on the spot. Regardless of the pain, he knelt down on his knees, lowered his head and clasped his hands together. Great Lord of Radiance, you are the great, you are the most high, you are the holy, you are the most merciful, I fall at your feet and beg you to forgive my transgressions and consider my sins weak, forgive me for my shortcomings. Rich white light lit up from him. On the crown of thorns, the white flames beat and dance, burning higher and higher. The rosary beads suspended in mid-air seemed to be supported by white flames, and the light gradually became brighter. In the middle of the magical formation, Archer Lot gritted his teeth and drew his strong bow for the second time. On the magical array, the white light gathered, and a layer of flame condensed on the tip of his arrow, as fierce as burning. On the mountain road in the distance, Archmage Philby walked slowly and with a serious face, hiding his figure. The ground beneath her feet was undulating like waves. She took a step at will and moved forward dozens of feet. After taking a few steps, she was already near the crowd and had a defensive spell in her hand. Little Greet, you have to be careful. Boom. A heavy sword was struck from mid-air. Wilson, the warrior who was vomiting blood after being hit by Cyrilla, rolled and crawled and finally escaped from the flames. He made a long circle, ran out of the ice wall, and rushed into the battlefield again. That silver dragon can't be defeated, but everyone around him can kill one by one. The evil wind blows in the face. Bernard was riding on Appa's back, his body covered with various buffs, defenses, and healing spells, and he held the bone rod in both hands. The silver moon deer stepped forward with all four hooves and galloped at top speed. When it reached the top speed, the barbarian roared and hit it with all his strength. For the glory of the Lord of Radiance. For the boss. Roar. Above the head, a thrilling dragon roar sounded. Sarah sprayed out another breath of dragon, and the seriously injured Glory Knight went limp. The paralyzing dragon's breath, this time what comes is not the ice dragon's breath, but the paralyzing dragon's breath. The glorious power surges in his blood. From wielding a wooden sword as a child, to training in a monastery as a teenager, to decades of long battles and training. Year after year, I finally became a 12th level high-level knight. Even if he is seriously injured, even if he is paralyzed, it is not something that a mid-level knight can take lightly. However, Bernard is already at level 9. A 9th level barbarian can activate a rage and gain approximately 10th level power. There are dwarf elders who have gathered everyone's strength to create exquisitely crafted armor that can absorb a large part of the attacks and shocks. The various buffing spells on his body enhanced his strength, agility, and endurance. Riding an 8th level monster, the huge silver moon deer rushed towards me at full speed. Even with its inertia, it was already terrifying. Roar. At the tip of the bone stick, the phantom of the monster appeared again, roaring toward the sky. This time, the beast's soul did not attack alone, but circulated and vibrated in the bone rod. Along with Bernard's whole body strength, it hit the falling heavy sword. Boom. In an instant, the ground shook. Appa took a few steps back, his hooves dug deeply into the soil, and white light suddenly flashed on the antlers, caressing his whole body. Bernard leaned back with his bone club, almost throwing off the deer's back. The glorious knight named Wilson flew out directly and broke a big tree. Under the shock, a mouthful of blood spurted out again. At this time, the long arrow burning with flames was already held at the tip of Cyrilla's claws. The silver dragon lowered his head slightly, and a series of attack spells fell like a waterfall, beating the archer so much that he could only take in air and no air was released. The magical formation has shrunk to its limit, and it is close to the bishop, and can only hold the archer's head, shoulders, and neck in the formation. The bishop still lowered his eyebrows and continued to pray. Please show your omnipotent authority, please show your power, may everyone hallow your name, may your kingdom come. He raised one hand upright in front of his chest, and reached down with the other hand to place it on the archer's head. Press the thumb between the eyebrows, and spread the other four fingers to cover the top of the skull. As he prayed loudly, the flesh on the archer's body quickly shriveled up, and his cheeks became sunken like a skull. Soon, he opened his lips and exhaled softly, completely losing his breath. Beside the bishop, Bai Yan seemed to be suddenly given a boost of oil, and instantly became like a substance. And on top of the white flame, a human figure gradually appeared, with wings on his back and an empty object in his hand. An astonishing momentum gradually rose. Gretel, pyroblast. 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 Why the hell haven't you destroyed it yet? Nature, mountains, surrounding trees, weeds, vines, tell me what's going on inside dash. No feedback. The ice wall had already evaporated under the continuous pyrotechnics and turned into a vast mist, blocking all sight. The trees, weeds, and vines surrounding Blast Heart have also been destroyed by pyroblast. However, the entire forest, the entire nature, was frantically calling the police, asking him to leave here quickly and not to stay. Cirella. Withdraw. Gretel shouted. There was a long roar in the sky, and the silver dragon tightened its wings and swooped down, grabbed his shoulders, turned around and flew away. Gretel was hanging there dangling, with his head lowered, and he quickly threw down auxiliary spells. Soothing spell. Mage armor. Cat's agility. Wind ring spell. Appa, Bernard, run quickly. Before he finished shouting, the figure on top of Bien had gradually condensed into substance from a turbulent virtual body. It, or he, floated high in the air, opened his eyes, and looked around. Then, he crossed his arms across his chest and pulled them apart. A long arrow made of pure white flame appeared on the bowstring. Then, the entire human form collapsed instantly, and long arrows were injected into it. The arrow of light rose into the sky, cut through the thick fog, and shot straight into the sky. Greed was horrified. Almost frantically, he threw out all the defensive spells he knew. The ray is deflected. Reverse the arrow. High mage armor. Ice wall. Ice wall. Ice wall. Cirella. Dodge. Dodge. He kept shouting. Cirella crossed the top of the mountain, folded her wings, and rushed down. There was a loud noise, and the arrow of light shot into the hillside, directly shattering half of the rocks. Among the broken trees and branches, the snow, mud, dust, and mist, the shrunken light arrow shot out of the air and shot directly at Gretel. The silver dragon folded its wings, covering Gretel inside. Gretel flipped his hands, superimposing defense. The arrows of light are getting closer and closer. Well. A faint sigh sounded in the air. Then, a woman in a long skirt stepped out of the air, her hands wrapped with lightning, and she easily grasped the light arrow in her hand. Little Greet, you still haven't seen the ultimate move. Tomorrow is June 1st. Everyone, remember to vote for me for your 3 guaranteed monthly votes next month. Just wish me a happy Children's Day. Thanks to @Yamengbing for the 20,000 starting coins. Thanks to the Strong Sea Monster for the 10,000 starting coins reward. Thanks to for the 5,000 starting coins. Thanks to Motorad Maria for the 100 starting coins. All other friends have been unblocked. Several other streets in our district have been unsealed. There is no sound at all on our street, and the neighborhood committee phone has never been able to get through. I don't know if it was deliberately left there to pretend to be busy. Crazy wronged. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 883. Senior Sister. Greet was surprised and happy. With a cry, he let out a long sigh, and his whole body collapsed. Thank God, Senior Sister is here. Cirilla won't be hurt. He let out a breath, hanging limply on the silver dragon's claws, and his whole body went limp. Archmage Philby stepped into the void, nodded slightly and smiled. Well done, little Greet. Sarah, how are you? Are you injured? As he spoke, he lowered his hands, one opening and one holding. Thousands of lightning burst out from the fingertips, condensed into threads, and moved downwards. Gretel looked along her fingertips and saw thousands of strands of silver lightning condensing into two cocoons of light. A light cocoon lay flat on the ground, motionless, as if the person inside had fainted. The other light cocoon stands straight upward, a little bumpy and convex, constantly changing shape. Greet guessed that it was probably the spellcaster who still wanted to struggle. Why bother? Why bother? Senior sister is here, you can't stand still. Gretel clicked his tongue and shook his head. The strong wind roared above, Cyrilla flapped her wings twice, slowly lowered him to the ground, and returned to her human form. I'm fine. The silver dragon girl pouted, a little angry, and looked unconvinced. Archmage Philby smiled and patted her in the air. Okay, okay. Our little princess did a good job. She didn't kill that guy in the end because she wanted to protect Gretel from getting hurt first, right? If you were alone, you would have killed them long ago. Right. That's right. The silver dragon girl suddenly held her head high. Archmage Fairby smiled and said. So Cyrilla is very good at fighting, but she doesn't have enough experience and hasn't seen enough big moves. Next time you see her, you'll know how to deal with it, right? Cyrilla nodded vigorously. Archmage Philby glanced at Gretel, who was hesitant to speak, and said slowly. The luminous arrow just now was the result of the 12th level glorious bishop condensing his entire life's energy and sacrificing the body, soul, and will of another person of the same level. With the help of the magic weapon, he communicated with the core of their beliefs and triggered a downgraded version of the divine descending technique. That. Gretel blurted out two words and then stopped them immediately. After thinking about it, thousands of words condensed into one sentence. Level 13? Level 14. It can reach level 14. Archmage Philby felt the light arrow leaping in her hand. Even if it was covered by a thunder and lightning cage, it was still rushing left and right, constantly struggling. You will definitely not be able to catch it, Cyrilla. Next time, remember not to use your wings to catch it. Oh. Cyrilla nodded a little frustrated. The Archmage looked at these two little guys, and then at the barbarian lying on the back of the silver moon deer, trembling every step, and finally crawling back to his original position, with a smile in his eyes. Okay, we fought really well this time. Come on, little Greet, Cyrilla, and the rest of you, what trophies do you want? Ah! Gretel was stunned for a moment. What? Divide the spoils. Senior sister, you killed everyone, you even saved a few of us, and you gave us the spoils. Senior sister, you are so kind to us. Archmage Philby pursed her lips and chuckled. She raised her hands slightly, plop, plop, and two bodies fell on the ground. At the same time, the nearby light cocoon spread out and turned into thousands of electric lights that fell into her palm. Only a few thick electric lights were left to form chains, locked on the soldier, and juxtaposed with the other two corpses. Come on, pick any one of these three corpses. Why are there two more? Gretel's voice almost broke. Just kidding, the three of them were already fighting each other, and the situation was full of danger. If there were two more and the senior sister didn't come, wouldn't he have to die here? Because there were originally 5. Archmage Philby looked at the little junior brother who was about to jump, and smiled playfully. You don't think that they came to you because there was a flaw in their defense, right? Originally, the council used you to make a trap, kill a few of them, and give them a warning. Then, you will be clean. She raised her head slightly and sneered across the coast. From this point of view, even if you haven't done anything today, you should still get a share. Come on, pick one, drag it back and dissect it. Or sell it to Black Crow Swamp in exchange for other resources. Greet shuddered and shook his head desperately. To be honest, if it was the Black Crow Swamp, where there were rows of corpses that had been frozen hard for many years, he would be willing to drag them back to the mage tower as a reserve for the general teacher. However, those people had just come to kill him, especially since the soldier was still alive a few minutes ago. He asked him to drag him back and kill him. It was better not to do it. This style of beating people to death and then immediately dragging them back for dissection reminded him of a certain notorious army, and he really couldn't do it. The Archmage sighed regretfully. Little Greet really has some inexplicable moral persistence and inexplicable soft-heartedness. He is unwilling to even drag the body back to the Black Crow Swamp and sell it to him. However, perhaps because of this, he always gets more preference and care. After all, whoever deals with him doesn't have to worry about being sold one day. Okay, then, do you want this sword? Give it to Bernard? Such a heavy weapon is just right for him. The soldier's heavy sword floated up inexplicably, and moved towards their direction at a steady and slow speed. Looking at the way the electric light flashed on the heavy sword, Gretel could determine two things without using his brain. One, the iron content in this heavy sword, or the content of iron group metals, is very high. Two, senior sister has definitely mastered the magnetic levitation technology. Absolute. The épée floated closer and landed on the ground, making no sound or even a trace of dust. Greet looked at Bernard. Bernard knelt down and held the handle of the sword, then raised the weight of the heavy sword and bowed respectfully. Thank you, Your Majesty the Archmage. But this weapon is not suitable for me. He straightened up and held the bone stick on his back with his backhand. For me, a big bone stick is better. Archmage Philby hummed, indicating that she understood, and did not try to persuade him any further. She grabbed it casually, and the cocoon of light cracked open in the distance, and a long bow flew out from the distance. Where's Cyrilla? Do you want this bow? I don't like it very much. Cyrilla only glanced at it and looked away. Archmage Philby glanced at the long bow behind her. Although it was just for show, it was also hollowed out, carved, and inlaid with gems. There was no lack of decoration at all. Well, the bows and arrows that the dragon clan likes are really not like this. She didn't feel dissatisfied. With a flick of her hand, all the corpses and weapons on the ground were taken back into space equipment and disappeared. With another grab, the light cocoon in the distance and the soldier lying on the ground were pulled to him. You can't handle the rest. I'll take it back and work with several other schools to strip out their valuable things, calculate the price, and share it with you later. Little Greet, don't worry. No hurry, no rush. Greet nodded like a pound of garlic. Don't talk about breaking up with him later, even if you don't break up, it's natural. Senior sister has worked hard to follow him for so long and help deal with the biggest danger. Shouldn't she take away all the loot? He didn't care, and Cyrilla didn't care even more. The silver dragon girl stared into the depths of the woods, furious and clenching her fists. Obviously, he is still thinking about the battle just now, how to fight it more crisply and have a greater chance of winning. Archmage Philby saw their reactions in her eyes, smiled slightly, stepped on the void, and flew upwards. He rose to the top of the tree, suddenly lowered his head and raised his voice. Little Greet, you have to be careful next time. Remember to change your appearance, and let Cyrilla change her appearance too. Can Bernard and White Deer become smaller? In short, don't get caught when running outside. Ah. Good. Gretel agreed with a grimace. What's terrible is that the magic of disguise is only a level 1 magic in the illusion system, but it is easy to learn but difficult to master. He has already memorized the spell model, but he wants to use it on himself. He hasn't used it much. Let him put makeup on himself, and the look he made was terrifying. Body shape, appearance, the whole thing changed with magic. Greet tried it once, and the effect was very beautiful, which was about the same as walking into a funny mirror. An APA, how to make APA smaller? The characteristics of such a big deer are too obvious. It would be great if it could be transformed into an ordinary-sized horse, but he has never practiced animal reduction techniques. He has always been afraid of spells such as enlargement and shrinking. How does the mass increase during the giant transformation process? Fill it with what? Did the organs and blood vessels also enlarge? During reduction surgery, where does the reduced mass go? Are the internal organs and bones compressed tightly, or are they partially hidden? Ask him to imagine, he has no clue. Ask him to dissect, he dare not. Dissecting a subject under the influence of a spell requires vivisection. He can't do it. Archmage Philby threw the problem to her junior brother and left in the air. Return to Nevis, divide the loot according to the inherent procedures, and take out the magic equipment. Body, soul, anatomy that should be dissected, imprisonment that should be imprisoned. Then, the Archmage carried part of the bishop's body and relics, especially the parts that could prove his personal identity, and rushed directly into the battlefield. Thousands of lightning lights around me opened and closed like flowers, directly tearing apart the light curtain of the sacred magic circle. Michelin. Her clear voice echoed across the battlefield. The explosions below were like thunder, and arrows were like rain, but they could not suppress the voice of Archmage Philby. I'll give you the killer's body back. I'll set up a little trap and you'll just rush in with your head down. The council thanks you for your contribution. He raised his hand, and a shriveled head, wrapped in half a broken cassock, fell lightly. It fell into the royal army camp and exploded on the spot. The ground was covered with thunder and slurry, and the knights beside the camp screamed. Remember next time. If you want to fight, we will meet you on the battlefield. Don't think about assassination every day. Happy Children's Day, dear readers. I'm unblocked. Already walked 8,000 steps today. So happy. Stretch out your paws and ask for votes. Please vote for me with your guaranteed monthly ticket for June. Thanks to @Uchiha Kentetsu for the 343 starting coins.